Hello, and welcome to Loose Change Investing, where we're going to learn not to fear the market and how to invest small sums of money to play in the stock market. Please take a moment and watch at least my first video. It has some great information about the series in general, some assumptions I'm making about my audience, some information about me, and some disclaimers on the information within the videos. Okay, in the first video we did talk about DSPPs and DRiPs, or direct stock purchase plans and dividend reinvestment plans. So how about a little more information on those? All right, when you use a broker to invest, that person that you're speaking to has an entire team of people behind him looking for information on the web about that particular business, following industry trends of that business, knowing people who know things about the business, and able to compile lots of information so that they can recommend the stock to you as a good investment. With DSPPs and DRiPs, you become that team. It's up to you to do the research. It's up to you to find out things about the industry. That's the thing that the stockbroker gets paid for, is knowing all that information and having that team behind him. Since we're not paying that, we have to fill in that gap. So what do? We use the internet. We use publications from the company itself. We watch news articles. Luckily, business news is still fairly unbiased. We don't have the rancor and the blustering that we have with the political news at this point in our history. But there are still some biases out there, and we've got to take our information that we find on the internet with a grain of salt. So we'll have to look over that information and find a way to kind of digest it and learn about it and figure out what it's really saying. The more that you do this DSPP and DRiP investing or investing on your own, you'll find out what certain code words mean and how to understand different things. A few good websites that I use are MarketWatch.com, MotleyFool.com, NASDAQ.com, and others. You'll find your own, but those are three good ones to start with. Any company that's listed on the New York Stock Exchange has to file several documents with the SEC. Two of those important ones are the 10K and the 10Q. Those are annual or event-driven reports that talk about the financials of the company in very rigid terms so that it's easy to understand what they're saying, at least for the economists, so that they can tell us what's going on. But with a little practice, we can learn to read them too. Another document that the company will produce is something called a prospectus. This is their annual advertisement to entice you to buy their stock. So take it with a grain of salt as well, of course, because that's their promotional material. That's them trying to sell you. Within that prospectus, we're going to find lots of things. The company's going to be talking very highly of itself in terms of things that it's done in the past year. Those companies that do lots of community involvement will list lots of that stuff. We'll have biographies of the folks on the board and high-level managers as well. We'll also have some forward-looking statements. The SEC and businesses are very careful about these. They are telling us how they think things are going to go in the future, but they have to be very clear that these are indeed predictions and that, truly past performance is not an indication of future performance. So the 10K is the formal version of the prospectus. It has lots of hard numbers and things like that in it that really mean most to economists. 10Ks are important to us, but we're probably going to have a hard time completely understanding what's within them. There's lots of balance sheets and things like that in there. I myself don't even pay a lot of attention to those. I typically rely on the prospectus, investigation that I can do online, and things like that. In addition to the 10K, there's a 10Q, which gets published on a quarterly basis. It's a small version of the 10K. Further, there's a document called the 8K. It is a a document that is generated when there is an event that affects the value of the stock or the company. Something like a bankruptcy, or the possibility of maybe a board member quits, or a board member purchases a large amount of stock or sells a large amount of stock. These events could possibly generate an 8K as well. Another useful document that we can take a look at is the plan description. These are very similar from company to company. They just kind of outline the parameters of the DSPP or the DRIP. They often outline the fees associated with the DRIP or the DSPP, and how that the stocks will be purchased. There's a couple different ways that they can do it. They can purchase it open market. Some companies just have a large block of stock that they own themselves to handle things like this, and what they do is they just kind of move the stock around in an accounting fashion, rather than actually putting your name on the stock. Talked about that before, the street name. Again, we'll go into that in more detail later. Okay, armed with this information, we're now ready to go to Broadridge.com, AmericanStockTransfer.com, ComputerShare.com, or ShareOwnerOnline.com. And these are the transfer agents that will manage the purchases for us. Again, we can't do this completely on our own. We can't just walk up to Acme Company and knock on the door and request stock certificates for money. It is a little more complicated than that, but this is the least expensive, least complicated way that we can do these things. There are several different families of ways that these DSPPs and DRIPs work. There's what I would like to call no-load DSPPs, there's loaded DSPPs, and then there's full-on DRIPs. So little information about each of those. A no-load DSPP is one where that there's no charge for us to purchase the stock, except for a small administrative setup fee at the very beginning. And then after that, basically the company takes care of all the fees in terms of purchasing the stock. Almost all of these plans have a small administrative fee for selling the stock as well. Okay, so that's something that's kind of common through all of them. Loaded DSPPs are stocks where that not only does the company charge you to sell the stock once you're done investing, but they also charge you a nominal fee for purchasing the stock as well. We'll go into the benefits and drawbacks of all of these at some point, so just kind of take the information as it comes right now. The DRIPs are a little different. DRIPs do not allow the direct stock purchase through the company, so we will have to employ a broker or an app-based way to purchase our first stock. And then after we have one stock, the DRIP plans allow us to do the dividend reinvestment and optional purchasing, just like a DSPP. Okay, those loaded DSPPs, they charge around, or usually not more than 5% of the purchase, and then they charge somewhere less than 10 cents a share commission. Fairly reasonable, and again, as I'll show you later, there are actually some benefits to these charges to us. Another good thing to look for in a DSPP is a stock that offers a dividend. This is extra money that we get paid just for owning the stock. We always hope that our stock increases in value, but one great way for it to increase is for the company to just give us stock simply for just being in the game and owning their stock. I would encourage all of my loose changers to make sure you start off with dividend stocks. After that, it's just timing the market, and we're not into that. We don't do market timing. So, what does it mean to look for a dividend stock or a good dividend stock? Well, number one, we want their annual yield to be in the top 25% of all dividend stocks. So, what does that mean? Well, think of yield as the interest rate on your bank account. Okay, so if we put in $100 at the beginning of the year and we have $110 at the end of the year, the yield would be 10%. A fine number. So what that includes is not only the increase in the stock value, but also any dividends you received as well. Has it missed or decreased dividends in the last period of time? You can decide for yourself what your period of time is. There are several dividends super rock stars out there who have not missed nor decreased their dividends in over 60 years. We'll discuss those in one of our episodes as well. Has the dividend increased over the past few years? Again, you'll figure out your own time frame for this, but it's very nice if that dividend keeps increasing. That shows that the board is strong and they kind of know what they're doing with the business and they're leading it in a good direction, and the value of the business continues to increase, and also investors like what's going on and they continue to push money into the company so that more money can be made. Can the company pay the dividend from its current earnings? So one really important indicator of a company's health are earnings per share. So what they do is they take the overall earnings of the company and divide it by the outstanding shares, and that gives you earnings per share, which correlates nicely with our dividends as well, because the dividends are reported by share as well. And so we want to make sure that the earnings are supporting the dividend rate that's being paid, because if it's not, what that means is that the company is paying their dividends from something other than profit, which usually means reducing their operating cash and things like that, which is not a good deal. Lastly, does the company seem to have the ability to continue paying this dividend rate into the future? Okay, this is where some hocus pocusry and some crystal ball gazing comes into play here. We basically have to take everything that we can find out about the company, look at past performance, and try to divine out of that whether or not we feel like that the company will be able to continue operating in such a way that the earnings per share stay up to be able to support this level of dividend and also maybe grow in the future. So again, we look at all those reports we talked about at the beginning of this episode. We take a look at the 10K, the 10Q, any 8Ks that are available, prospectus, and things like that. We get on the internet, we search around, we try to find some sort of balanced stories about the company so that we can try to make an informed decision about what the company might do in the future. Once we get our answers for all of these questions, which we're going to do in many subsequent episodes, I'm going to take a look at various companies. First, we're going to look at the four that I own, and then we'll go on to some other ones as well. Please feel free to send me requests on companies that you would like to have reviewed. If they fit into our scenario, I will certainly do that. If not, I'll probably try to communicate back to you and tell you why that doesn't quite fit, and maybe you can pick out a different company. Good day. Save that loose change. And remember, invest wisely by investigating before you invest. And now, a word from my lovely assistant.
Give him a like, a subscribe, and hit that bell.
That's a wrap.